Welcome back to the Pretty Little Lifters podcast. I am so excited to be here with our guest, Lauren Cella. And I became Instagram friends with Lauren through another teacher. Somebody reposted her and I was like, who is this? I want to be friends with her. She is amazing. And after I found her and started looking at her content, I just loved that she was a history teacher using social media to make learning fun, also spreading positivity and building community. She's so creative. She's super engaging with her high school students. And I love that she can find humor in teaching because we know that us teachers need some humor with our line of work. And I am so happy to have her on the podcast now. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, Tiffany. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here, especially since you are very pregnant and due very soon. So I appreciate you taking the time. And actually, by the time this airs, you will already have your amazing little bundle of joy here Earthside. So that is amazing.
That is correct. Yes. So I just started maternity leave a couple of days ago. We finished up spring break, and that was just sort of like my exit cue. So yes, very excited to be a first-time mom and just take some special time to bond with our baby girl. So yes, lots of exciting things happening.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. So give our audience, give our listeners a little taste of like who you are, where you're located, what you are doing personally and professionally.
Yes, Tiffany, of course. So my name is Lauren Cella. There's no H because it's Italian. So it's like cello or like Gucci, like the C makes a CH sound. Okay. See, we're learning. But I'm originally from Southern California, Los Angeles area. I currently live in Kern County, so Central Valley, so California girl. I have been teaching for about 5 years and I love it. I went to college at San Diego State. I studied journalism, media, and history. And that's what I teach. I teach world history and I teach journalism at my high school. So I get to just talk about my passions. I get to hang out with young people all day. And obviously, besides the pregnancy, I just have been married since 2016. We have 2 dogs and we are just on this new parenthood journey.
I love it. And I think it's so cool. Like, you've been teaching for 5 years. I'm on my 15th year. But I think one thing that's really fun that I always like to remember, like, yeah, I've been teaching for a while, but like, I always can learn from other teachers and especially younger teachers. I feel like sometimes veteran teachers start to think that they know everything and I'm like, pump the brakes. You can always learn from those who are younger and just a little different life experience. So I know one of the things you and I connect on a lot is utilizing social media. Can you share with us, why did you start your account? How did it start? One thing I will say for the listeners, this isn't like she just started like a social media account and it was like the first time, like you old school, like used YouTube. And I have seen your like videos that you posted and I was like, oh my gosh, you were meant to be doing something in front of the camera. I was like, you are a natural.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I appreciate your compliment calling me a young teacher. I am still a young teacher, although I actually am the oldest one in my department now, if you can believe that. So yes, social media is something that I am super passionate about. I was an early adopter. I like aging myself here, but I grew up with more MySpace and Facebook and Tumblr. And, all of these platforms. And then in college, I studied social media when it was new, this was like 2010, 2012, and it was very different back then. And my professors like predicted a lot of the trends that we're seeing right now in social media, apps that aren't based on likes, building community, less focus on aesthetics, more focus on authenticity, augmented reality. So I did have some idea of things that were coming. I started Instagram in 2012. The current account I have, I started in 2015. I started it kind of more as like like aesthetic account. This was like when, you know, hair and makeup and fashion and like posting your breakfast and your lunch,
Yes.
that was enough to get likes back in 2012, you know, so I made it like separate from my personal account. Um, and then when I got married, the Lauren, my last name changed. So I was like waiting to get that Lauren Cella handle. I was like waiting for it. And it finally became available over COVID, and I changed it. And I think that is around the time that Reels started taking off, and, you know, TikTok had just come out, and we were really seeing that shift in 2018-19 towards like short form video content. So I kind of pivoted in that direction, and I noticed that almost most of my videos that were about teaching were the ones that were doing the best. And I was like, okay, this could be like a niche. So I started, you know, with that, and that was really where it was at for a couple of years. My students really encouraged me to get on TikTok. I was like, guys, I'm too old for TikTok. I missed the boat. And they're like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't, miss. You can do it. Like, your videos are really funny. Like, they were so encouraging. So I was like, okay. So, you
I
know,
love that.
I got on. I'm like, if you guys say so. So I got on there and really just have been kind of more consistent for like the last 2 years of posting like teacher related content. And then, you know, last month or a couple months ago, it finally just took off with that Gen Z teaches history series, and it just went viral. That series, like combined, has tens of millions of views now. So this is very new, but it's opened up so many more opportunities to connect with people in the teaching profession and people who want to learn. And it's just been so much fun.
So, for those of you listening who aren't familiar with her new series that she does, I'm obsessed. I watch every one. I'm obsessed. I am learning. And you created this series, and it's basically like a Gen Z teacher teaching history. And it's like an abbreviated version. I don't know how you get it so concise in like the real limits, but it's so good. And you're just like embracing like, what a Gen Z teacher might talk like and act like. And the history content is on point. And I feel like somebody who I'm a, you know, physical education teacher. So I used to teach history when I was multiple subjects. I just think this would be such a great tool for teachers because you're literally talking in the current generation's language, and you've just got all the bullet points and it just makes sense. And it's almost like a little story, like, what's the gossip? Like, give me the tea on this. Like, tell me what's going on.
Absolutely. So the series itself is actually over a year old. I just didn't really have that many followers before, but the people that were following me were really receptive. So I just kind of kept it going. And if you scroll down, if you really want to be like, you know, Creeperville and scroll down, like you can see that that series is actually pretty old, but it just took off recently. So it just kind of shows like, if you know that your content is valuable and creative and the people that you serve like it, just keep going. It's like not really about the numbers. Eventually it will take off. So yes, but that series, I literally just made one and then it took off. I said, well, maybe I'll make another one. It probably won't happen again. This is like a one-time thing. And then it happened again.
Yeah, no, I totally remember when you first posted the first one, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is something. I was like, this is so good. Like, you nailed it. My favorite is like, you all have to watch it. Like, you need to go to her page and watch it, but you have your little like Dunkin' Donuts cup. And I was just like, meanwhile, I was like, it's too good. It's too good. But like, I've commented on your stuff before, and like, when I go through and see it, one of my favorite things is seeing comments from people who are like, oh my gosh, you are making history make sense. Like, I get it now. So this is from people who are not in the education industry, who were taught this, but didn't really understand the material. Then I also see comments from educators who are like, I use this as like the lesson intro to this topic. And I love that. Like, I love when teachers are not afraid to embrace new technology, to embrace new ideas, and to kind of speak our language, speak the language of the students. I think it's so important. Like, what are your, thoughts on that, of like the benefits? Like, that's going to be like, let's chat about this a little bit. Like, what are the benefits like you see as like an educator who can embrace like pulp culture, modern technology, like all of these things with like the new generation is doing? Like, what are some of the benefits like you personally see?
Absolutely, Tiffany. That's a great question. I think it's about providing access and equity. And I know it's a silly series, but if you actually listen, the facts are correct. And it is a form of mastery to be able to summarize something in the vernacular of slang or Gen Z or whatever. So it's actually like the opposite. It's more difficult in some cases to do that. So I think where, more traditional teaching techniques maybe don't quite hit with the students, I think social science,
Yeah.
especially, has a history of being elitist and, quite frankly, has a history of excluding certain groups on purpose. And the language in the curriculum oftentimes reflects that. And there is this stigma that if I can't understand this is, I'm not smart. I don't understand this. I don't see myself in this. I don't get this. I don't care about this. And I see that in
Mm-hmm.
most of the students that come through my classroom. They most of the time will tell me, I don't like history. I don't get history. It's boring. So I think once the students realize that they can understand it, that they can relate to it, that they see the same things happening in our world right now that have happened before, and they make that connection, they are so invested. So there's no benefit for me to go up there talking using all of the big words that I learned in my history major that all of these 14, 15-year-old students do not understand yet. So I want to make one thing clear. I
Mm-hmm.
do not just sit there and talk like a Gen Z teenager all day. I think that would be a little much. But I do have to break it down. And that's what teaching is breaking it down in a way that students can understand. Now, it's not always that dramatic or silly, but just breaking it down in a way that they can understand and have access. And then the academic vocabulary, the terms, the dates, those will fill in naturally. Those will build over time. But you
Mm-hmm.
have to get that buy-in from the students first. And once you overcome that, anything's possible.
Yeah, no, I love that because I mean, like I said, I used to teach history too when I was multiple subject, and it was the same thing. You'd have some kids that were just like used to learning history a certain way, and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this is so boring." And it's like, "Well, how can we make it fun and relatable? Because just reading from the textbook or like learning the same thing, doing the same type of things, like it just doesn't land all the time." And I think that's when like we as professionals like have to start thinking outside of the box. And I think that's one thing like I've always prided myself on as an educator. Like ever since I started teaching, I was like, never saw myself as like a teacher, like how you imagine like the teachers you had. And I'm like, no, like we're going to make it cool. We're going to make it fun. Kids are going to want to come to my class. Like that was just something that was always super important to me. Like I will never forget, like when I moved up to fifth grade, I was like, okay, how can I make this classroom fun? It's not going to be boring. And this was like when emojis were like becoming a thing. I had like emoji wallpaper and all this, like it was just so fun. And I remember like a teacher's aide coming by and she's like, I love how like you are not afraid to like take what's important to them and like bring it into the classroom and not make it like a dusty classroom that's been this way for years. And like the same thing goes for like the way we teach and the curriculum. And like, I think even for like PE, same thing. Like things have been done a certain way for so long. And I'm like, it is time to shake it up. Like it is time to speak their language. Like same thing even with like music choices when I'm putting on things in class. Like I have a clean TikTok playlist and I'm like, we are listening to this while we were working out. And it's like they love it, you know? And I think instead of like fighting against it, just like embracing it, and it's fun. Like I like it.
Yes. I wish that I would have had a PE teacher like you, Tiffany. Like I always liked sports. I was an athlete, but I just love your focus on like wellness and like mental health and just being like the best version of yourself. And like, especially, for these women and girls, like on strength and things like that. Cause, we grew up in like the 2000s, like diet culture, and it was bad. And I'm just so happy that
It was bad.
yeah, it was like I didn't even know it at the time, but like looking back, I'm like, wow, that was all really bad. And that I had to unlearn a lot of those behaviors, thankfully. So I'm really grateful that, there's people like you out
Yeah.
there changing the conversation for this next generation.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. One thing you mentioned was that like your students were encouraging you to get on TikTok, and I love that. Did you ever, because I know my personal experiences with this, did you ever have any fear of like, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, I'm supposed to be this way, but now I have this social platform. Am I supposed to be professional? How do I balance it? Am I worried about what I'm going to say? Like, what was your experience with that?
Yes, absolutely. So, for one thing, I don't follow back my students. So, if any of my students are watching this, I love you. I will not follow you back until after you graduate. So, if after you graduate, you want to have, a 30-year-old friend, I would gladly accept requests. So, but at this point, it's public, and even though it is silly, I do keep it mostly professional. I don't really post too much about like things that are really personal or controversial or like adult content. I just kind of keep that stuff separate because I do know, not even my students, but I know like a lot of my following is young, and I take that seriously. I do try and be like a role model for them as well. So using it responsibly in that way. And if again, I will not follow you back. I will not, so you cannot DM me. But yes, the kids will see my videos. There's no getting around that. They were my earliest supporters and earliest fans. Um, and you know what? Some of them think it's kind of cringy, but most of them, I think it's kind of cool.
I know exactly what you mean by that because I definitely like I don't follow any students. Same thing. Like last year, I had an advisory class who graduated. They were seniors. So after they graduated, I was like, okay, we can follow each other now. And I love seeing their college journey right now and like seeing what they're all up to. So it's actually been really fun. They were an amazing group of students, and it's so fun to see them like thriving in college and doing different things. But yeah, no, it definitely was interesting for me, especially because I wasn't like you were doing teacher content. I wasn't. I was doing like fitness content. So, when I work out, I'm like in a sports bra and like leggings. And I'm like, am I allowed to do this? And I kind of just was like, yeah, I'm allowed to do this. Like, I'm a human. This is what I wear to work out.
Mhm.
I'm not doing anything scandalous. This is for my health. I'm leading by example. And like once I kind of got over, that mental block of like, I had to be in a box as a teacher, I was like, now I'm thriving. And I'm like, I just feel so much more freedom. And I know that it all still like aligns with like me personally and like my job, and especially now that I teach physical education. So it does feel like a little more like freeing to be able to like merge both of those worlds, which is like really nice.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm grateful because I have an admin and a team, a department that is very supportive. And I have a student body who's very supportive. I have parents who are very supportive. So it's really great to see like that small community get spotlighted or uplifted in any way. So I feel like the vision of my account kind of aligns with the vision of our school and the vision of our department. So it's great.
Yeah, no, love that. It's always nice when you have like a supportive group of, coworkers, but who also get it and like see the bigger picture of like the benefits of this. And what are some positive things that you have experienced with social media? I mean, we've been using it for years now. And what are some of like the benefits that you've seen either personally or even like for your students? Like, what are some things that you see?
So I see social media as a positive, coming at it from the perspective of a social science teacher, is the amount of awareness that this generation has about current things happening in the world, politics, global issues, social issues. They are just so much more aware of these things. And I think that's overall a good thing. I also believe that, especially with TikTok, that this short form video content, I think it has democratized learning. I think there is now an avenue for anybody really to learn about anything that they want whenever they want. And that kind of access is just unprecedented. So I think that's very cool. And I think from the creator side, someone who maybe is not from Hollywood or California or somewhere like that, but is very talented and has very important things to say, like has a chance to get heard by the community that needs to hear it. And that would never have happened without social media. So that is definitely the most positive thing that I have seen, is just how easy it is to learn things. Like kids can get on and learn about history. We were like struggling when we were trying to do our hair and makeup. We had like an older cousin that had like a Cosmo girl.
Yes, we didn't have these tutorials.
All these kids look so cute. They all look so nice. I'm like, man, you guys have it easy. But it all goes along with that. It's because they can learn these things. And that's really great. And they can learn them for free, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think for me also, one has been connecting like you and I. Like I don't think we would have met in real life, if it wasn't for social media. So I feel like I've just been able to connect with so many amazing humans and amazing women. And also, like you said, like the learning, like we have access to so much. Like instead of like when we were kids, it was like using an encyclopedia to look something up, and it's like now it's like, let me go online, or let me see this expert who has a channel who talks about this all the time, or a history teacher who is dropping gems about certain topics. I just think that's so awesome. And one thing, because I know you teach journalism too, I teach a broadcast class elective. And one thing I try to stress to my students, because we are a STEM school where I teach, and a lot of them are interested in going into STEM fields, but even we have a couple that do want to get into the arts. And one thing I always tell them, I don't care what field you're going into, this is such a valuable tool. You could be going into a medical field and you can create a platform where you are teaching or learning or like sharing your skills, or like giving access to people who like don't have access to whatever knowledge you have. And I just think it's such a cool thing. And I know there's tons of negative things that also we all know those things, but I do like to focus on the positive, because I think they're, at least I think for you and me, probably I can say is like, I feel like we've experienced so many positives, and we can see it from like the student side and also the creator side, which I think is just so cool. All right. So another thing I was thinking about was, I was talking about this with some friends yesterday, and I was like, I used to not see myself as creative when I was younger, because I always thought of creative people as like, or talented people as like artists, like singers, dancers, performers. And then as I got older, I was like, wait a minute, like I am creative. Like maybe it's a different way. It's not just people on stage or people doing things. Like we're creating content, we're creating ideas, we're creating lessons, we're doing all this stuff. So like, what was your experience with like when you had that moment where you're like, yeah, I'm creative?
I'm so glad you said that, Tiffany, because I was looking at that question earlier and I really thought about it. I feel the exact same way. I did not consider myself creative because I thought I had no talent, like no artistic talent. I cannot sing, I cannot dance. You can go on my TikTok for evidence of that. I do not have, like, I'm not good at painting or really anything. But I have always loved social media and making profiles, and I like appreciated art and music and putting things together and solving problems and like making throwing events for my friends or for my school as a student and as a teacher. And one time at our school we had like a band playing, right? And they were so good, they were former students, and I was just sitting there with some of my kids. I was like, man, they're so talented, like I wish I was talented like that. And they were like, yeah, miss, all you could do is go up there and like talk about World War II. And they were right. And I'm like, yeah, that is what I could do. I said it in a loving way, but teaching is creative. Teaching is a talent. Like relating to people is a talent. That is creativity, like innovating these lessons and changing your lesson 100 times a day to accommodate all the students in your room takes so much talent and creativity. And again, social media amplifies that because, yeah, there's not like a traditional way that someone could just be talking about history. Like you're not going to do that like a talent show or like at a movie premiere or like at an art gallery, right? There aren't traditional ways for like talents like that to go viral or reach a lot of people. But with TikTok, there is. So now I do consider myself creative, just not in the way that I expected. Turns out I do have exactly one talent.
Yeah. But like, even like, we think about like behind the scenes, like me starting this podcast and learning how to edit, like that's a new skill. So it's like you making these videos and learning how to condense like important information into like bite-sized things and still get all the important things in there. Like, even us like walking into the classroom and without a lesson plan, I'm sure we could both be like, all right, this is what we're doing, and like come up with something so cool on the fly. And it's like, that's when I'm like, oh yeah, we are creative. So I just like that there's definitely a broader sense of like what creativity is than like what we grew up with, because that's all we saw. Because none of this was here. So it's been so cool to experience that and to see other people using, social media to share different talents and creativity
Right.
that they have that probably they never even thought they had either.
Absolutely.
For our listeners that are interested in pursuing something creative, maybe connected to their field or maybe totally out of their field, what kind of tips or advice would you give them?
So, the biggest tip I would have, and this sounds kind of harsh, so I'm sorry, and I'm not always the best at this, but it was very difficult for me to make the transition from like a personal social media account to like an educational, entertaining community type of account. And the way you do that is you don't make content for yourself. Your content cannot be about yourself. Your content has to be about the audience that you want to reach. Just nobody cares about your dog. Nobody cares about your lunch. Nobody cares about your niece except you. And that's how I grew up using social media. Is you just kind of posted what you were doing, and like your friends that you knew in real life would comment because they care. Like your friends and family, like your little Facebook friends or your MySpace friends, or even. But now it is different. So nobody cares to see just a hot girl in a pretty outfit. Like That's not going to convert. How did you, where did you get that outfit? How did you style that outfit? How can I look like that? Nobody cares about your nice house, but like, where did you buy that? How can I make my house look like that? So it doesn't really matter like what it
Mm-hmm.
is, but you have to be providing something valuable. If you're just like showing someone your life and you're not the only people who really know you in real life are going to care, but probably like an audience that you're trying to create with or sell to or work with, they're not really going to respond to that. So I think that's a really hard is you don't make content for yourself. Like I used to use Instagram as like a diary, like and that's really, you do
Yeah.
still have a personality and be yourself and that will shine through naturally, but like your content needs to be teaching something, inspiring people, giving them some sort of tips or value. There's needs to be some reason why they follow you.
I agree with that because even like, you know, shifting away from like a personal account to like having the Pretty Little Lifters, I always had to ask myself, like I would check in like before I posted, I'm like, who is this for? Is this for me because I look really cute in this outfit? Or is it giving something? Because sometimes you would feel like you'd have those moments where like, I need to post, I just need to post something. Oh, I look cute here. And it's like, well, what is this doing? It's, I just like the way I look. And guess what? There's a time and a place for that. You like the way you look, do you post your picture, but just like I think the intention and like knowing it. So like now I, you know, I will check in with myself, like who is this for? Even like me when I was doing, you know, fitness type content, like I would post some pretty advanced stuff. And that was kind of like a trend at one point a couple years ago. And I don't really do that anymore because I'm like, who's doing that I'm showing this to? Like, that's for me. It's like, look at me, look at me. But like, my job is to help you get there. So if I'm just showing you something like crazy and advanced, like, sure, it's like awe inspiring, wow. But like, am I teaching you how to get there? You know what I mean? So it's like a little bit of that, like, what's your intention? I think something else I would say for those of you who are maybe having something that you would love to pursue and just, I think getting out of your own way. We are our own worst critics. And I think just start. Like, just start. You're never going to be ready. Just start. Just start your first post. Just start sharing like the thing you're super passionate about and just show up. Like, just be like, you know what? For 30 days, I'm going to show up. I'm going to post a reel for 30 days and just see what happens and just be consistent, because I think people get just really nervous about showing up in a different way and like owning their voice. And they might be like, I'm not good on camera. And guess what? Maybe you don't have to be on camera. Maybe you have something else that like you're doing with your hands and you can just film your hands doing the skill or whatever it is, you know? So I think also adding to what Lauren said and just having that consistency and showing up and just like committing to it, because that's what I did when I started. It was like every day, every day, every day. And it was just like, that's how I got to where I am. So yeah, I think this is great advice for people kind of just starting out. And if anybody listening, you know, needs any more advice or feedback, you could reach out to either one of us. And I'm sure we will, you know, be able to give you some more insight on that. I mean, I feel like that could be like a whole nother episode.
Totally.
So my last question that I love to ask all my guests is, what advice would you give to your teenage self and teens today?
Yes. I do actually know what I would say because I do give advice to teens every single day. Um, I tell them to just be themselves and just go for it because nobody cares and nobody's going to remember. Nobody's going to remember. Nobody's going to, I tell them, guys, I was in high school 15 years ago. I don't remember what my desk mate was wearing. I don't remember who had a history presentation. I don't remember what I had for breakfast. Teenagers are so worried about what everyone thinks about them. And even if you do make a big mistake, people forget. about it by tomorrow. So just,
Mm-hmm.
I understand where that anxiety, where their generation comes from, growing up online and having a mistake and having it be there forever. And that is good. So I will say, when you're online, yes, you do need to be very careful about your online footprint, because that is forever. And I'm glad they have that awareness. So whenever you have the opportunity, whether that's in class or at school or wherever you're at, try to unplug and get with your friends in real life and just be silly and just make memories and just have fun, because it's going to be over so quickly and you're not going to remember exactly what everybody said. Unfortunately, you probably won't remember everything that I taught you about World War One. But you're going to remember like the people and the feeling, and I don't want you to miss out on that because you're too scared to look dumb or make a mistake or have people laugh at you or whatever it is. So just go for it, because you're only young once and this is it. And take advantage of it, because there's a lot of opportunities out there and you guys are young. People are going to give you a lot of grace. They know that they're kids. Most of the adults want you to succeed and do well. So just go for it. If it doesn't work, who cares? Just try something else the next week, the next year. Just go for it.
I love this advice. I think it's so important. It's also important for adults. Like, we need this. We needed this advice when we were kids. And I totally agree with you. It's like when you were kind of going through the list of like, I don't remember what that person's history presentation was or what they were wearing. I'm like, I don't either, because that's just not how our brains work. And I think if a lot of teens knew that, and guess what, like, this is the time to like learn and grow and make mistakes. Like, who cares? You're all making mistakes. You're all learning together. It's just go with it, have fun. And at the end of the day, the only person, that you have to report to is you, and like how you feel about yourself. So I love that. And I'm also going to take that advice. So
Perfect.
So Lauren, how can we support you and where can we direct people?
So I am on Instagram and it's just my name at Lauren Cella, Cella. And I am on TikTok now, apparently. I don't really know how it works, but somehow I'm on there. So same thing, but it's at Lauren Cella 92. Because I'll let you guys know a little secret. I was born in 1992. I am a millennial. I'm not actually a Gen Z. Don't tell anybody though. All right.
I definitely recommend following her on both of those platforms. She makes quality, top tier content. I love it. I look forward to the videos. I am so glad that you kind of found, like, I feel like with social media, you kind of always find your groove or like certain things. And like, I think that was a hole that needed to be filled. People needed relatable history content. And I am so glad it's you that is putting it out there. I love it. So to any of my history teachers or parents or anybody who's just like, I never knew what that was. I need to know about the Cold War. I never knew what it was. Like, literally, like, a quick bite-sized version will help you understand it more than probably the chapter in your history book did. So Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you are pregnant. You are due any day now. I made a joke earlier before we started. I was like, what if you had the baby? Like, and it was like during the podcast, like, and it was like, okay, gotta go. Sorry, going to the hospital. But we made it. You are fine. Baby is not here yet, but I cannot wait to see photos of baby girl. So enjoy the rest of your maternity leave. And by the time this airs, baby girl will be here already. So that's so exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Tiffany.
And thanks to everyone for tuning in to the Pretty Little Lifters podcast. I'm so grateful for Lauren for taking time out of her day to join us. And we will see you next episode. Bye. And that wraps up this week's episode, team. Thanks to all you Pretty Little Lifters for being a part of this conversation. Want to hear more of these convos? Subscribe to the podcast and leave a rate and review if this resonated with you. If you want to talk more about this topic, follow me on Instagram at The Pretty Little Lifters. And in case nobody told you this week, you are a strong, confident, gorgeous goddess, and you got this.